Welcome to Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 333, Year-End Planning. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Let me introduce the co-host. We have Adam Carpenter from IT Professionals of Iowa. Adam, how you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Awesome to have you again. And unfortunately, John is away today. He's prepping like 52 workstations and 15 servers or something like that. I might have inflated the numbers a little bit, but he is busy today and getting some stuff ready for the week as we're going into a conference this week. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. All right, Adam, you are my only co-host today. So guess what? You're up as
All
far as
right.
a tip or trick.
Yep. So, just kind of a reminder, all of us put our information out when we're on the show for a reason. Reach out to us. Even though the Facebook group is friendly, you can ask whatever you want there. Sometimes it's easier to talk individually with somebody. I've had, one or two people reach out to me. That's great. That's why we're doing this, to share. With the conference coming up as well, I've talked to, I would say, a lot of people that have been on the show, and just in the community. Everybody's very approachable. Just stop up, say hi. If there's any questions, let us know. That's why we're here.
Absolutely. I like that approach. Yeah. And as far as we're going to talk about it in a minute after my tip, but yeah, when you're coming to things like a conference or whatever, you're coming to meet people, you're coming to mix it up a little bit. Yeah, definitely don't be shy and come in and, say hi and don't feel bad at all. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm nothing special. I put my pants on just like everybody else does. And we just want to have that conversation out there. And that's why we do these things. All right. So I ran into an issue yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, maybe a couple days ago. It might have been a couple days ago. It took me a while to take care of it. Anyways, all of a sudden I had a problem with two of my Gmail accounts, both domain names. One is I use my last name, Halash. So I have halash.com. And the other one is my business name, which is technutpc.com. And I have several email addresses in the TechNut PC, and then I have family members that use the Halash.com. Anyways, my two accounts were not syncing with Outlook 2019, which is the Office 365 version. And it was syncing to a point where it was connecting to the server, but it wasn't syncing the folders. So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this is a problem I just started running into with some of my customers that will use Gmail, but maybe plugged it into an older version of Outlook 2013, 2016, whatever. And a lot of times you basically, everybody knows when you do two-factor authentication, you've got to use a one-time passcode that you put into Outlook, and that's what it remembers. And so anyways, that wasn't this problem. I had been using these, and yes, I'm the bearer of bad news because I don't follow my own advice on everything. A lot of my secondary accounts, in other words, if they're not main accounts, I don't have dual authentication turned on because I have several accounts. And so it's kind of a pain. Well, we're getting to the point now where that is no longer an option, not only for myself, but even for my customers as they're coming. And there's a toggle switch in your Gmail account, which is called um, less secure apps. And they recommend not turning this thing on. And I've had to do that temporarily because, as everybody knows, to go through on the phone with a customer and say, listen, okay, you got your phone, you're talking to me on your phone. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to send you a little prompt. Just hit yes. And then I'm going to send you a text message to your phone and you're going to give me the digits to that so I can put it in. And I do everything, remotely, but I'll do it on my own machine. Just makes life easier. So anyways, I've had to do that with a couple customers. And then yesterday I bit the bullet and turned on dual authentication, I think on almost all of my accounts. And so I'm moving towards that way whenever I can. And then I come to realize too, there are a lot of things that I log into that should have dual authentication on and probably doesn't. So that will be something I will be going through on my own to figure out. I'll probably just turn it on because it's so easy to do nowadays. You might as well just do it. I know it's a pain. because every time I set up my computer, logging into my accounts, it takes time. It's just part of the thing. The other thing that made me realize is I know a lot of people will use one email address and they'll funnel a lot of their other email addresses into that one main account. I actually now, looking at all the 7 different accounts that I'm over, I might actually start to do that because it's going to make a little more sense. I don't really need to send out from several email addresses. That was kind of nice in the day when I was trying to keep everything separated, but now that's becoming a pain. So I'm going to try to probably bring it down to 1 or 2 email addresses that will be out there. And then obviously I'll leave the other ones open and just forward those into my main account.
So, are you using a password manager, or what's your process?
So I use a password manager for my passwords. And it needs to be cleaned up because I mean, it's pretty organized. If you looked at it, everybody would go, wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, but there's probably about 40 different things in there that actually need to be categorized, and it's on my to-do list. I want to get there. And then there's other accounts that have fallen off, or maybe companies have, stopped selling your services or whatever it was. And so I get off those accounts and stop remembering those passwords. I probably have somewhere around 250 passwords saved in my LastPass manager.
Sure. Yeah. So I got a new phone this week, and my concern was the two-factor, but I used LastPass, and I used LastPass Authenticator, and I was just able to restore, and it just worked. I was like, wait, that was too easy.
Well, that's a good point too, because I've been caught before using the Google Authenticator back in the day, and I think I had it on a tablet, but I didn't have it on my phone, or maybe it was the other way around. Anyways, one of the devices died, and it wasn't on another device, so I couldn't get to the Authenticator app. Now, in hindsight, and this might be a good idea, even though a lot of people might think this is unsecure, if you're keeping it on your premises or whatever, it's probably not a bad deal. And that is, you can actually download backup codes. You either keep a digital copy of that, or you could print it off and put it in a safe or something like that, where if you absolutely can't get to your dual authentication, whatever you're using, you can use those backup codes to get in one time. They only work one time, and then it moves on to the next. They might give you anywhere between, depending on service, between 3 and 10 different codes. Sometimes you can specify, sometimes not. So that might be a good idea. I know a lot of people say text messaging is insecure, and yes, it is. But it's also a 6-digit passcode that lasts like whatever, less than 5 minutes. Most of the time when I'm getting that stuff, if I've got my phone on me, which most of us do all the time, I don't think it's that big a deal. And there's a lot of services that's all you can do. So you're kind of stuck there. But it's better to have an extra step, whether it be text message, using an authenticator app. And I'm with you, Adam. I totally recommend. I started using the LastPass one and moving stuff over. And you're right. It's in my account. It's there. And it doesn't matter if my phone blows up or whatever. I can get back into my account on another phone, log into LastPass. Boom. There you go. Done. So I like it. All right. That brings us to a sad but happy topic. And that is, this is the last advertisement for TechCon Unplugged. This is Sunday, September 15th. The conference is Thursday. I'm sorry, not Thursday. Friday, September 20th through the 22nd. Or, yeah, 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Yeah, through the 22nd. So it's less than a week away. We, unfortunately, are going to have to stop selling tickets at the end of the day today. So if you're listening to this on Thursday when the audio podcast comes out, just know tickets are no longer available. And the reason for that is because we've got to get in numbers for food and all that kind of stuff. So we're getting where we need to be. And I figure everybody that's bought a ticket by now, hopefully everybody that wanted to go was able to purchase a ticket. Yeah, that's all I can say with that. Anyways, it's bringing the IT community together, and you're joining like-minded business owners for a weekend packed with resources to help your IT business thrive. Hear from experts and get one-on-one time with peers. facing the same challenges you are. You can talk shop. You can talk about things that are going on in your business, get great information. You can walk away with concrete action items to take your business to the next level. When you get home, there's going to be things that you're going to learn from this conference that you're going to be able to take in your business. And again, it's all up to you, but I believe you can learn something from everybody that you come in contact with and take away a little nugget that's going to help you propel your business forward, give you some ideas, maybe some things that you weren't thinking about. And that, hey, as John always says, the one thing he knows for sure is he doesn't know everything. And we're all in that same boat. I can always learn from somebody, no matter how new you are in a business or how long you've been in the business. Everybody has great ideas. It's September 20th through the 22nd, 2019. So it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to techconunplug.com, get your tickets today, unless it's Thursday. Then you can't get your tickets because we'll be meeting the next day. Anyways, tickets are $199. Hotel room is I think the prices went up. I think it's $109 now instead of $102. So, but still a inexpensive getaway to help your business grow. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and this came from my good friend Paco LeBron, because I asked him today, I said, I'm hitting a brick wall, man. What can we talk about on the show? And he said, hey, what about year-end planning? I said, that's a great idea. I actually like that because we're going to go to a conference where a lot of us are coming back, but everybody is going into the month of October, November, December. Last 3 months of the year, we have a couple of holidays interspersed through there. We got some things planning for next year that we got to think about. And so, what do the last 3 months of your business of 2019 look like? And what are the things that you're going to do or start to prepare to do to get your customers ready? Adam, where do you start with obviously planning these last 3 months of the year, especially with some of these milestone things we have coming up? I believe it's in January.
Yep.
Do we have an OS that's saying
Yep.
bye-bye, no more?
Yep. January we got two of them actually, Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2. So we got a lot of those, and as I'm sure most of us have, we're gonna have a lot of clients that are gonna push it right up until the end until we force them to move. So we're gonna have a lot of that going on. It's always nice to go into the new year with projects for this year finished up. So whether you need to push and get that done or make the time, but we always have these conversations when we talk to clients and say, we try to start a year in advance. If an OS is going to be phased out or what have you, look, we need to get this started because when we get down to January, it's going to be like we had this conversation yesterday, and you and I both know it. So, try to get any projects finished up. Depending on the company and how things are going, they may have extra money that they want to spend in order to claim on taxes and those types of things. So those are some things that you need to keep in mind. But yeah, like you said, the year is basically over. By the time you throw the holidays in, people are trying to use up vacation, all of that. We're pretty much out of time already.
So how, obviously, you're preparing your customers to basically come together and try to figure out what it is they need to do. And like you said, there's a lot of people that push back up until the last minute. So what is your strategy moving forward? And do you have an estimation of how many Windows 7 machines you still have left out there?
I would say we probably got around 30 or so, 30 or 40, which doesn't necessarily sound like a big number, but if you look at the amount of work days we have left, that's still an issue. But so we're going to do a combination of things yet. We're going to do some more email campaigns. We're going to do some Facebook stuff. We're going to call out and specifically talk to people. So we're going to be very much in their face because this needs to be done.
Now, why do you think that people are holding out when it comes to doing stuff the last minute? And another thing you talked about a little bit too was it's becoming the end of the tax year. So now is the time to budget for those projects and get as much tax liability off of your business revenue as you possibly can.
Right. I think the biggest thing for our clients is they just don't like change. They just don't want to do something different.
Yeah, that's pretty much pretty much everybody's like that. Nobody wants to change. Nobody wants something new. Now, have you found it a real hardship moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10?
No,
Okay.
but
Nobody's pushed back or, said, this thing is just horrible.
nothing comes to mind. Once people have changed, once it's in front of them, they've pretty much accepted. Okay, well, we have it. We might as well use it. But like we clean up, we try to make it as close to Windows 7-ish, I will say. As far as looks. So we'll clean up the start menu and kind of shrink it back down. We don't use any alternate start menus, but we'll do what we can with the original. And we take that chance to kind of pin things to the taskbar and kind of straighten up as much as we can. But once people have used it for a couple days, it's not a big deal.
It's funny because I still use the full screen start app just because to me, it's 10 times quicker than what everybody else is doing. I just don't, looking at it now, I just don't understand how people actually live in that little tiny start menu anymore. Obviously I've got things that are pinned to the taskbar and all that kind of stuff, but it just boggles my mind. It's like, wait a minute, all you gotta do is press your Windows key and everything's right there. And if you're old, you can see the icons because they're big. So, there's that.
Yeah, for me, I live on the taskbar. I pretty much have the same things open it most of the time anyway. So between auto start, when the computer comes on, and Chrome, I really don't go to the start menu very rarely. And most of my clients don't either.
Right.
They have an icon on the desktop or put it on the taskbar or what have you, but it's still the fear of change.
That's a good point. So obviously we got Windows 7 and like you said, server R8 or server 8 R2 is ending. Do you think that there's going to be anybody that's going to push past the end date?
For our clients, I'm sure there's going to be some that try, but I mean, as a whole, absolutely, there's going to be industries that aren't. We still got people using XP, so yeah, there's still going to be people that are lagging behind. But as far as some of our compliance clients, they're not going to have an option. I mean, they do, but they're going to continue without us if that's the case, because I'm not putting our business at risk.
Right.
But I don't think it'll be an issue.
Right. Very good. So what other things are you planning for the end of the year? How do you basically pull stuff together to figure out, with the time left, how you're going to get all the things that you want to get done before the end of the year? How do you put that all together?
So for us, really, the biggest thing that we have is just the OS upgrades and machine replacements. So that's not a big deal. My business partner handles all the tax stuff with our accountant, so I don't have to deal with that. So for us, it's not really that big a deal. I have decided that after TechCon, that'll be the last conference for us this year. So because there's always going on, there's more invites than you can deal with. But so we're going to kind of do that so we can focus on the Windows 7 stuff mostly. So even though events are fun, sometimes you just got to say no and get some actual work done.
Right. John Reed's asking a question. He says, server 2012 R2 is ending too, right?
I don't believe so, at least not in January.
Yeah, I know it's got to be, the dates on these things. What I'll do is I will pull up a link for when everything is ending, because there's a couple of links that I've found in the past that I have saved somewhere that basically talk about the end of the product life and when they're going away. I know a lot of times when I'm doing a WSUS, update file from, the Windows Server stuff, I'm downloading things, and you'll see there's a tab for legacy modes or legacy products. And I kind of look at when things get put in there, because I think 2013 Office is, I want to say something like 2021 or something like that. I don't know that that's ending anytime soon, but I could be wrong on that one too.
So it looks like 2012 R2 is good until October of 2023. So we got some time on that.
Oh, okay. 2023. Wow.
Yeah, which is surprising since we have 2016 and 2019 out now.
I know. It's it never makes it any easier. Oh, all right. So obviously you're getting some things together, and it seems to me towards the end of the year, you start to get, especially from the residential side, I don't know what it is, but around this time of year, people want to call up, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. And, I've got some major issues with my computer I've been dealing with for the last 8 months, but I want you to look at them now. And it's like everybody comes in at the exact same time. So how do you deal with, are you able to basically, I know you deal with more business customers. Are you able to hold them off and go, hey, we're going to take this in a logical order and work with it?
Right. So, um, what we're going to do, and I'm going to keep going back to this Windows 7 thing because that's right in front of me, is, we've talked to clients that are required for compliance a year in advance, and we're at the point now where we're going to tell them, look, it's first come, first serve. So if we have residential or whoever comes in first, you're going to have to wait because we've already had this conversation and you chose to wait. For residential, if it's what we would call a managed residential, then most likely they're not having too big of an issue. We already have remote support, so we can probably get them in quick, or maintenance or tune-ups are basically automated. If they're a first-time customer, we're going to try to get them on one of our managed plans in order to prevent this type of emergency in the future.
Gotcha.
But at some point, you're just going to have to either turn people away if you're too busy or schedule them further out. There's nothing you can do if you can't get them in.
Now, a lot of that stuff, obviously, because there's more to, I think, when you're talking about doing a migration from Windows 7 to Windows 10, there's a lot to that process. You've got to usually, unless they're using a server and they're just using their laptop or their workstation as a dumb terminal, then basically they've got to have things that need to be backed up. And even then, you probably still have a lot of customers that will have stuff that's on their computer anyways that maybe shouldn't be on there, or maybe it is on there. Migration from your Office 365, all that kind of stuff falls in there too. So there's a lot. It takes some time to get that stuff done.
Yeah, we certainly have tools to help with that kind of automate it, so you can do more than one at a time if you need to, or what have you. Like Fabs is great for that, for most of this stuff. So what we're running into is most of our clients, if we're doing a Windows 7 upgrade for them, most of them are at the point where it's time for a new computer anyway. So we're going to do new computer, new OS, and then transfer what's needed.
In a lot of these Windows 7's computer, what would you say is the average age out there right now of the computers that you're dealing with that are still on Windows 7?
So for residential, I bet they're pushing close to 7-8 years. For business, and we get those machines in, and we're like, I don't know how you could sit in front of this. There's
Right.
no way, and most of it's because they don't know. We can send out newsletters, we can tell them until we're blue in the face, until you get them a computer that's on an SSD and current processor and all that, and they actually see it for themselves. You're just speaking nonsense to them. But yeah.
Want.
Right.
Exactly. That's all they, it's like they're nodding their head in agreement. Yes, we need to get this done. Yes, I'm hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth, and I don't really care. What's for lunch?
Yep, pretty much. But it's the same response every time. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. Well, I know, I've been telling you.
And so, I look at a lot of these computers, and especially people that have bought maybe cheaper computers, which a lot of times the stuff that we inherit aren't necessarily going to be the things that we would recommend it. So it's like, hey, you're using this e-machine that you bought from Walmart as your business class computer, and it's 7 years old. What are you doing? And you're like, people don't realize the night and day difference between not only the modern operating system, but modern hardware that you get with that. So, and it is, they're like, oh, this is so much faster. I don't have to brew a pot of coffee and come back and, my app is open. QuickBooks or whatever it might be. Yeah. It's
Right.
just, I always laugh. So when it comes to when you're recommending an upgrade during this cycle, what are kind of your minimum specs that you're looking at?
So our standard machine is 250 gig hard drive, minimum 8 gigs of RAM, Core i5. That's our base machine. For the most part, we haven't found the need to go to 16 gigs of RAM for most people at this point. And then we're going to see how much space they're using on their drive before we recommend a 500 gig drive. Most of our users don't need those yet. You still have the exceptions. Some do, some need more, but 250, 8 gig, and Core i5 is our standard build.
Well, I think a lot of times when you're using, if you've got a server that's doing a lot of your heavy duty backup and all that kind of stuff, you really don't need, they just need access to the files, right? They don't need them necessarily on their computer.
That, and on top of that, a lot of things are web-based anyway, so it's not a big concern anymore.
Right.
But we wouldn't go smaller than 250. You're looking at Windows 10 now with their storage sense or whatever, where they want you to have 20 gigs of space for the OS upgrades now, so you don't want to go with too small.
And I would say most people, would you imagine that most people are probably less than 80 gigs, including the operating system, of information on their computers at most time? And that's on the large end, to be honest with you, because a lot of them are less than that.
I would say, yeah, for the most part, that's about right.
Okay.
Probably right around 60-ish.
Okay. So that's the days of having terabytes and terabytes of computer space. Now, again, the prices, when you jump from a 250 gig SSD to a 500 gig SSD, you're not doubling the price.
No, I looked the other day, it was literally $20.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a big deal. We usually keep some of each in stock, but $20 is $20. If they're using 60 gigs, there's no point, and they've had that machine for 6 years, there's no point in doing a 500 if they're not using it.
I think I've standardized on the 500 just because I was lazy.
Yeah, well, whatever makes your job easier, I guess.
It was just like, hey, because the price didn't matter, right? I was just throwing a price out there. Hey, here's what the total cost of replacing your hard drive with an SSD and reinstalling your operating system. Here's the cost. Here's what it is, and do you want it? It was either yes or no. So the price of whatever I was paying for the SSDs, it was just like, it didn't really matter. But I'm sure now when you're looking at business class stuff, though, I know when I've looked for refurbished machines, a lot of times the 256 or your 250, 256, whatever it is, that's usually kind of the sweet spot in a lot of these machines that are a couple, 3 years old. And so,
yeah. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll still get a machine with a mechanical drive and just put a new SSD in it.
Now, what's your process for doing that?
So what we'll do is we'll get the machine. We'll also order a new SSD if we don't have them in stock. We typically do. We'll put the drive in. We'll load a new version of Windows 10. We'll use the key that's on because the machines we get have a refurb sticker with a key on it, so we just activate with that. So pretty straightforward.
Very cool. Yeah, move that stuff over and
yep.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah, it's always nice to start fresh because you're giving them the cleanest, best experience.
Yes, and that's a good point too. I don't think I've ever bought a refurbished machine, even if it did have an SSD, which is a lot of times I'll buy them that way. But I don't think I always wipe them.
Yeah, we do too. Even if we get one with an SSD, we still put a fresh image on it because I don't always like the driver tools they use, or who knows what they're doing on it. Just I like to start fresh with, and I know exactly what's on there. I know how it's going to behave. That's just what we do.
Yep. And then that you can kind of mitigate any problems that you might run into because of that. Matter of fact, it was funny because I actually have to shut down my computer to restart it back up to turn my mixer on and before we get ready for the broadcast and all that. And all of a sudden I had my computer restarted, everything was up, and I had 3 black screens. And I'm like going, are you kidding me? So I go in, I hit reset. Nope, that doesn't do it. So I do a hard shutdown, start it back up. Well, what pops up on the screen?
Windows update.
Nope, it wasn't that. But there was an update that happened, and I don't know why it happened. So my processor has a video card embedded into the chip. I don't use it. I use a regular full-fledged video card. But for some reason, the Intel display drivers installed themselves, and I think there was like this little conflict that it was having between my NVIDIA drivers and the Intel drivers, even though I don't run that. Now I have, if I got to pull my video card out of the system, I can plug into the other display, right through the motherboard, and it works fine. And I've actually done that when I've sent a video card back or whatever, and it works. So I can't complain. Which begs the question of why I need such a high-end video card. But anyway, another story. Because simple stuff does work. All right. So what other things are you thinking about, or are you customers? Do your customers come to you with anything towards the end of the year where they go, "Hey, we'd really like to get this done now," or is it something you have to push to them every time that you want them to do something?
For us, for the most part, it's, hey, we've been talking about this. It's time to actually get it done. They don't typically come to us wanting to make changes. But having this conversation right now makes me think we should probably have some sort of cybersecurity presentation or something for some of our larger clients, because we're going to have a lot of online shopping and that stuff going on with holidays and stuff coming up, and regardless of whether they're supposed to or not, they're going to be doing it at work. So we should probably be having some of these conversations on how to do that safely.
That is one of those things I still will not do that. And it's funny because I will see people that will log in on a work computer, and I work for a pretty large corporation, Ford Motor Company. They'll log in on these workstations that log into a server, and they will basically pay bills online and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, even though we all have separate logins, I'm still like, yeah, there's absolutely no way.
Yeah. Well, and another thing we see a lot is people will use their work email for personal things, whether it be bill paying or whatever, without the thought that I may not have this job forever, and if I don't, I won't have access to this email. So then what do you do? So
Well,
keep work and business separate. Or I mean work or life, personal and business.
right. And that's another good point, because here on the residential side, here's the number one thing that I see, and it's still a problem. And I've done my best to take my client base and help them to move over to something else. None of them can fully let go of their ISP email address or AOL, Yahoo, etc. So I've moved most people over to some sort of a Gmail account at least, and said, okay, really, you need to start moving your stuff over. I know it's going to take you time, and that's fine. We're going to give you the next year or 2 or 3, and you'll move your stuff over. Because eventually, if you move and you can't you can't get Comcast. Now, here's a funny story. I had Comcast years ago. In Comcast, if you ever stop their service and go with another service, they'll tell you, I think they keep your stuff for 90 days or 6 months or something like that as far as your email. Well, I was without them for 7 years, and I moved into another area, and I had the other web service that I had, and they stopped working. And this was a few years back when I was having problems, and I went back to Comcast. Do you know my email address? And all my emails were still there.
That's kind of scary.
It is, because it's a forever thing, right? That stuff is out there. And so I'm going through and I'm looking at these emails of when I used to use this as my main account. I'm like going, wow, I haven't shopped there in a long time. I haven't shopped there in a long time. I really need to. So I was, unsubscribing from a lot of these emails and trying to and I still get a ton of emails through Comcast. And I try to tell people all the time, if you want, good, free, inexpensive, good spam filtering, just go with a Gmail account. I know, I get it. Yes, they suck your information dry. So does Facebook. So does everybody else on the internet. So what?
Exactly. Well, and it's not necessarily just you moving. A lot of residential customers are more rural areas, so they have smaller providers. That provider could go away, or they could just decide, well, you know what, we don't want to deal with email anymore, go somewhere else. So when we run into that situation, what we do to try to make it easier is we'll set up a new account, and then we'll forward the old account to the new one. So at least anything that's going to the old ISP account is still coming into your new account, and then you can reply from the new one, so people have that.
Now, we're going to get off a little on tangent here, but I'm going to ask you, as we normally do,
Right.
I'm going to ask you, as far as, so when you're doing a Microsoft login, let's say you're setting up a computer for the first time, maybe they have a login, let's say they don't have a Microsoft login. A lot of people have been using just the account, right on the computer instead of using a Microsoft login. My contention of that is you're missing out on some of the key features with OneDrive, et cetera, and all these different things. So what's your take on that particular subject?
Well, for us, if they're not on Office 365, most of our customers just want a local account and they don't want to deal with all the other stuff, so it's not an issue. We just
Okay.
set them up with a standard local account. And then if they're using Office 365, most likely they're a business customer and they're on a domain anyway. So we're still using a domain account and then Office 365 for OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever.
So most of my residential customers, if they have never had a Microsoft account, and there was a couple key features in there that for the residential side, which I think are important. And what I would do is if somebody didn't have a Microsoft account, I would walk them through the process of creating one. And a lot of times I would just use whatever their email was before, at outlook.com and create a separate email just for their Microsoft account. So they had that because again, it's just as secure, in my opinion, as a Gmail account or anything else of that caliber is out there. Not Yahoo, not AOL, not your ISP provide your ISP. So um, I at first I wasn't doing that. I was doing a lot of local accounts, but then we were running in all these little tiny issues on the residential side because not everything is a standard, right? So I started doing this, and it's made my life a lot easier. If I've got to go in and reset a password, we can walk through. And I always turn on do authentication, all that kind of stuff. So because it's easy to do, but it takes a little bit more time from the residential side. But to me, it's well worth it, and it makes my life easier if I'm trying to troubleshoot something down the road or do something else. Yeah, BitLocker recovery.
Yeah,
Anyone?
yeah. Look,
Oh,
that's another thing for me where if they're a business client, it's stored in Active Directory if we set it up with a group policy, so that's not
right.
a big deal. But yeah, that can certainly be an issue.
Now, as far obviously for your business side, you're using. I'm assuming you're using something like BitLocker to lock laptops down and all that kind of stuff. And anybody that's in compliance has got to use something where
Right.
their machine is encrypted. So basically, and for a lot of people that don't know, and maybe the simplistic view of this is basically if somebody were to pull that hard drive out, normally you can look at the files on that hard drive. But if it's encrypted and you pull the hard drive out and you put it in a slave machine and you try to look at the files, you can't get to them. So that's the because that would be the bypass for getting information off of something when you normally log into your computer. And so for laptops and stuff like that is a good idea. Depending on your situation, a lot of times desktops, and especially if you're in a business environment, you might as well just do it. And it's not really going to slow anybody down or do anything like that. It's just again, it's these layers and layers of things that we have to do on a regular basis in order to keep our customers safe because they're not going to keep themselves safe.
Well, and especially with modern hardware. Back when, a few years ago when we first started doing BitLocker, we would see a performance issue on mechanical drives or a decrease. Now with SSDs, you don't even know.
Now, okay, another side tangent. So have you used the NVMe drives?
I have not.
Okay.
Now just SATA.
Okay. That's fine. Because there's actually no noticeable difference between the two. But anyways. I tried it just to, hey, all this thing's so much faster. Yes, the numbers say it's faster. In real life, it is not faster. It
Yeah, the
isn't.
numbers, based on the numbers, you would think it would be huge.
Yeah, it's not. So going from a mechanical drive to a SATA drive or a SATA SSD, night and day difference. Once Marvin and Chris got me moved over to an SSD years ago, I'll never go back. Right.
Right.
Matter of fact, I don't have a mechanical hard drive in my machine at this point. I've got 3 SSDs. So and plus I have a very, I'm backed up everywhere. So I'm not really worried about if the whole computer blows up. I don't care. I still have my stuff.
Well, and that's it. I don't see it near as much as I used to, but I used to regularly see the argument that SSD drives, people didn't like them because if they failed, it's all or nothing basically. Whereas a mechanical drive, a lot of times you had a good chance of getting the data back. But my argument always was, if you're backed up like you're supposed to, it doesn't make a difference.
It's still a hard sell. It's getting less, but it's still a hard sell for residential. Just that price cost increase, and they're, a lot of them don't pay for backup, and it is one of those things. If that drive stops working, if it's an SSD, yeah, unless even if you send it out to a high end recovery, you ain't getting it back most of the time. It's just the way it is. So from that standpoint, but you're right, from a business standpoint, to have that stuff out there, it doesn't matter because you should have them on some sort of backup anyways. And let's face it, most of the time, I think a lot of people are backing up at the server level anyhow, especially when you're using a business domain and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense for that type of environment. It's not as big of an issue. But I think there's going to be, it's less and less mechanical drives. Now a lot of people out there will say, well, SSDs just don't fail. To which I say,
everything fails at some point.
Everything fails. Is exactly, especially electronics. If it's electronic, there's a good chance it's going to fail. So,
with Windows 10, with OneDrive, it's even less of an excuse to not have that data somewhere. I agree. OneDrive is not a backup, but if you have it there, I would call it more better than just on a drive.
Yes, and there's a couple things you can do if you're on the cheap, and we're talking about what you can do with your customers, especially on a residential side, sometimes even on the business side for some of your smaller offices, is you can, if you have a Windows account or a Microsoft account, you can log right in there. You've got your OneDrive. If you use an Office 365, you've got a terabyte. If you're just on a free version and you're not using Office 365, you still got 5 gigs. And what was happening is, and this started back in Windows 8, what a lot of customers were doing on their own without knowing it is they were sending all their files to OneDrive. So it was on the computer and then it was getting synced to the cloud. And what was nice about that is when they logged into another computer, didn't matter. All their stuff was right there. Hey, here's all it's like nothing. So their computer could die. It's kind of like having a phone. They would go in, they would log into that computer, everything was right there. And then you can do a couple things where you can do a local backup. Windows still has their Windows backup, and it works fine as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not a perfect solution, but it's better than nothing. You got it backed up in, a couple different spots. It's way better than nothing, especially on SSD. And that's the whole thing. It's like you have the ability to do it for free most of the time. It's hard to get customers to even do that. So. All right. So what other things do we have to look for? Because obviously one of the big things that's coming up, and we've talked about this a couple of shows ago, and that's this big thing of security. And I think it's just getting worse and worse and worse. We keep hearing more and more about ransomware this, ransomware that. Is there anything we can do to prep our customers, since it's year end, to get them prepared for 2020 moving forward?
I'm not sure specifically on 2020, but as I had mentioned earlier, with the holidays coming, the bad guys are very aware of that. And there's going to be a lot of mail and a lot of shopping, a lot of purchase, a lot of online stuff. And so I think we're going to do some sort of class or something for some of our larger clients just as a reminder. But holidays are going to be a big one.
Now, do you have any digital hoarders? Like email specifically?
Yeah.
And what do you do with it? I mean, because obviously files are able to get bigger and bigger nowadays, but I mean, what do you do with that when you're trying to, mitigate? It's like, really, do you need subscriptions to this, that, and the other? When you can look at your profile, you don't even read it. It's like, why waste the time and effort?
So we don't have any that's necessarily at running out of space or an issue, and if we do, it's because they're on a small ISP provided email anyway, so they're forced to do something about it because their email will stop working. So they have to start cleaning out. But for anybody on Office 365, we don't have anybody near the 50 gig limit at this point, so it's not a big deal. Um, it's just kind of all over the place. Some people will archive, some don't. Uh, but nobody stands out as a real problem child.
Okay. And what's your stance on the whole archiving process?
Um, so for us, if they want to archive, typically when we get, if somebody is almost out of space, or they come to us and say, look, I don't need all of this. I'm not one to say delete things. I don't like deleting, but so, what we'll typically do is we'll do for the last couple of years, we'll do a range like 2018, 2017, 2016, and then we may get to like 2015 and before. We'll do a large archive or something like that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Now, so obviously you've been doing this a while. Are there any times that anybody actually goes back into their archive and pulls information out? I'm just curious because I personally don't know anybody.
Right. So I've archived things and never gone back,
Okay.
but I still won't delete it. But
you are part of the problem, my friend.
yeah, I don't disagree with that. But I also have the space to do it. But I do have one client that I'm working with that we're moving away from 2008 R2. They're not a managed client, but anyway, they have old emails from an archive that they haven't been able to access for a while, and that's part of the issue. So there's one out of like 200 managed clients that that actually do it. Maybe they do, and I just don't hear about it, but it still makes them feel good. So
it's the comfort level. If you need to go back into something, a lot of times, when I look at emails, I look at the emails as conversations.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times when the conversations are no longer relevant, or I don't need that, it's not that like I don't keep emails, because I do. When I register for something, I've got registrations and all that kind of stuff is backed up. I get that. But as far as I do get to a certain point where it's like, do I need all the Amazon order receipts that I received through my email, or whatever,
yeah,
stuff
so
like that.
for Amazon specifically, I have like client folders, so I make sure they're all in all of those folders. So if there's for records or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Amazon and just look it up, but hey, whatever.
Well,
Each
you
their own.
can, but like, so for our Amazon business account though, if I go and look, I don't know who it was for. I may buy 6 of the same thing, but I don't know which one went to who.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. So you actually separate it out by client folder. I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yes. In that particular situation, I was just thinking about personal buying. I wasn't even thinking about the business side. You're right. I mean, as far as the business stuff, I guess I do catalog that stuff and hold on to it, but not so much personal stuff.
I delete a lot of mail and unsubscribe from a lot of things, so I try to keep it clean.
Now, do you ever go through that with your customers, where your customers are like, man, it's taking forever for Outlook or whatever my email client is to open, and I got so many things coming down, and it's just, I got hundreds of emails coming in here every day. Do you ever go through a cleanup process with them?
So it's not that common, but when it does happen, we tell them, go through and unsubscribe for a lot of things. And then it depends on where their account is. If they're using a generic ISP account, we tell them, there really isn't any filtering. There isn't much going on here. We can unsubscribe from things, but it's probably not going to do a lot of good. And if they're a business using something like that, or Hotmail or whatever, then we'll say, hey, we can get you over on your own domain email. We can get Office 365 in place. We have better filtering options and those things. So we'll have those discussions, but it's not that common for us.
Okay. And I would probably say that that's probably across the board, that it's that way. Most people aren't dealing with that type of stuff. I'm just always curious, because I always hear these horror stories of these people that just have a ton of emails. And that, family wise, I've cleaned up a few accounts where you're like, why are you subscribed to like 200 different emails that you get per day? It's just ridiculous. It gets overwhelming. And then what ends up happening is nobody actually looks at that stuff, or stuff gets lost, and that becomes a problem. But obviously on the business side, they shouldn't be doing that personal stuff anyways. So what could they actually subscribe to on their business email that they should be? You know.
Yeah, not that much. I mean, you always get vendor things and all that, but yeah. And that's where, so for year end, that might be something you do. What do you want to do new for next year? Well, maybe for some of your clients, you want to put policies in place. You can go out and get templates for acceptable use policies and those things. So that might be something to have a conversation about. Especially as ransomware and security is more and more of an issue, the more personal things you're doing on those business computers, that risk exponentially goes up.
And I would think is you're looking at things in the market and seeing what's going on and seeing maybe some of the changes that you're going to have to make for your clients. It's probably a good idea whether you use a to-do list, a piece of paper, whatever you're using to take notes, and probably set forth a plan. Put a plan together of the things you want to do. Because here's what happens. When you don't plan, things don't get done. I wonder why. When you don't plan, things don't get done. It
For
seems
me, it's
pretty
because I
common.
forget.
Exactly. We all do. There's only so much brain power where we can retain the stuff that we're supposed to retain with family, business, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's that way for everybody. And plus, here's the problem. If I don't brain dump that onto a piece of paper or a document or something like that, it sits around in here in my cranium and just goes round and round and round and round. And then you don't get sleep. And then there's all kinds of extra stress and blah, blah, blah. So there's a
Well,
lot of health benefits to that too.
on top of that, you're busy with the daily grind and things that you got to do that you just don't make time for it. So for us, my method is I will create a ticket for each customer that I want to do something specific for. That way, it's always in my face, and this needs to get done because I don't like having a lot of tickets. And we use Repair Shopper, but I like having it pretty clean, so that makes
That's
me do
awesome.
something about it.
That's a good idea. So you create the ticket for your client, say, hey, here's something that we're going to need to deal with. So
And they
now I've
don't
got notes of it.
right. They don't see it.
Right.
It's a internal ticket,
Right.
so we see it, but it's in my face. And hey, I need to get this done. I need to have this conversation or whatever. So that's where
That's
we go.
great. That's a great plan right there. That's awesome. I like that. All right. Very good. All right. Let's take a quick break. And if you can think of anything else that we can think about when it comes to year-end planning and things we need to look forward to, or maybe some of the things that you are looking forward to as far as, I don't know, new technology, keeping you safer on the web, et cetera, et cetera. But if you'd like to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. And I want to thank our newest Patreon supporters, Brian Hannon, Robert Michael, Robert Lux, and Andy Pimental. I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters for your continued support. All right. So, is there anything else that we can think of at this point where we need to prepare for next year, or some of the things that maybe we need to start off when it comes to the beginning of next year that we're going to, hey, I got to hit this hard and heavy. Here's some of the things I see coming down the pike, and I need to deal with this stuff head on before it blindsides me.
So I know for us,
Big question, right?
yeah, for us, we want to get an EDR solution, endpoint detection and response solution, put in place for most of our larger clients. But it kind of the reason we haven't settled on one or put one in place is due to that single pane of glass we're all trying to get to. So I'm waiting for. I think we're going to go with Sentinel-1. So I'm waiting for that to be integrated. But other than that, I'm not really looking at new tools or anything. What I have works. That doesn't mean I'm not keeping my eye on things, but that and we're actually going to start putting security policies in place for customers. That way, when something does happen, because knock on wood, we haven't had any ransomware or anything like that, but when it does, and the business comes back and says, well, why wasn't this blocked? We can say, well, here's the policies. This person shouldn't have done this. We do everything we can, but nothing's foolproof unless we unplug your internet type of thing. So we're going to get some sort of policies in place for that. And I'll actually send you a link for the templates and stuff.
Oh, cool.
That are free. So.
We will add that into the show notes. Very good. Yeah, that's good information to have. And so, how much time, when you're thinking about doing stuff in your business, how much time do you spend per month to actually set things up, to think about or make lists, things you want to do with your customers, all that kind of stuff on a regular basis?
Not very much. because we're busy with the day-to-day things. It, you know, unless something triggers the thought, really not very much, not near as much as I should.
So part of that, and we've talked about this in the past before, but part of that should be as far when it comes to things like calendars. To me, that's the number one thing that's going to get in my face
Hmm.
and show me that, hey, I've got a calendar event, whatever that is, and it's coming up, and I need to take care of it, or I need to even if it's on a to-do list, I will put a date on it. It needs to be handled by this date. But probably in your calendar, I would suggest everybody out there, and we're all guilty. None of us do this. Okay. Maybe there's, if you're out there and you actually do this, send me an email, podnuts@podnuts.com, and let me know that you actually do this. But put something in the calendar to where I would say if you can only start off with an hour a month and in day-to-day operations, an hour a month is not really that long a time. I would say less than that, but I think everybody could take an hour a month, not do other things. And you're just going to sit down during that time. You're going to concentrate. You're going to do a brain dump. You're going to take a list. And probably I would suggest, even if you're going to put it in digital format, the easiest way to do it and not get stuck is to have a pad of paper and a pencil and write it out.
Well, and something else you could do with that is if you have employees or more than one person in the company, you could do once a month, we're going to do a lunch and we're going to discuss these things. What can we do? If you don't have that option, if you're a single tech, what you could do is try to find some other uh, similar businesses in the area and do the same thing. Get out and make it an event or something so it actually happens.
And try to, and I'll say this too. Yes. And both of those things work really well. What you have to do is when you have more than one person involved, and here's what I've seen in the past is that you have to go in with a singular purpose. So there's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of people dealing with different things. What you have to do is say, okay, here this month, here is what we're going to talk about, and here's some of the problems we're looking at, and we're going to come up with some solutions on fixing this particular problem. And you concentrate on that. And then so the next month, maybe you move on to something else if you've solved that problem. If not, you're still in solving that problem. But here's the thing: once a month, that's 12 hours a year. If you look at it, that's better than the either scattered attempt or the 0 hours per year that you're putting into it now. So it's going to put you ahead. And then what you're going to find is if that's going to work for you, you'll probably add some more time to that. It'll end up being 2 hours a month or, end up being, whatever. And because there's time to do this stuff, you've got to make the time on purpose to set yourself up for success. If not, it's just going to constantly be there waiting in the wings, and you're not going to be moving forward. You're just kind of going to keep on rolling with what you have. And when something actually explodes, then you'll deal with it. Usually that's kind of how it works. All right, Adam, any other thoughts on year-end planning? Anything else that we can think about or look forward to?
Nothing that jumps out at me.
All right. I think we've handled a lot of different things there and given some suggestions on what people can do. And I've learned some good things too. I like that ticket thing. That was good. I like that. All right. So Adam, if you want to let people know where they can find you or see you at, why don't you go ahead and let people know now?
Yep, I'm in the Seeker Facebook group. You can email me, support@itproiowa.com. You can call me at 319-227-7000, and I will be at TechCon.
Awesome. Great to have you on the show. And I know we missed John, and hopefully he will be here. We'll have a show on the 29th. So no show next weekend because we'll be at TechCon Unplugged. But the week after that, we will have a show at the end of the month on the 29th. So come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnuts.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. You can send an email to podnuts@podnuts.com. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.